Welcome back to EPG program in Japanese, paper 5, communication through translation. Honyaku tsujite no communication. We are into module 29 now, learn while practicing, and we go to the legal section, the legal module once again. Jisten shinagara gakusuru horitsu bunno honyaku. The module has been developed together with Anukumari, the trainee at ongoing translation training program of CSER NISCARE. Now, this module covers application of CPCI theory and translation techniques as done in the previous modules for translating legal documents. Here also, simplification remains the key, simplification through combination and permutation, and looking through the prism of CPCI. Handling the content in this case is taxation. This is the recapitulation from the previous module. First is that the combination of macro frame and the 5W1H is an efficient and smooth way of doing translation. It can be the frame plus 5W1H, it can be frame plus 5W1H and substitution. So any combination is fine. Whatever you feel makes you happier, makes the job easier for you is better. But we are finding that macro frame plus 5W1H yields better result. It makes the things easier, and this process itself does not become burden. Understanding the frame in the previous module we found would have been a better way out. The job would have become simpler. Then the 5W1H and frame etc. renders the translation in a mechanical manner. So obviously you cannot have an outcome or output which will have that spirit coming in absolute terms. So if you want to bring that sense or essence also, then some fine tuning is required. And if you want to go for publish worthy translation, then of course it has to be rewritten. That means own the original content, go by the mechanical manner, own the final translation, and then final translation you rewrite. And the core equivalent for Toyu, we came out with the conclusion in the previous module, is called, and depending upon the context or the relationship of the elements in the context, it can be translated in through various equivalents. And we found one interesting one that was amounting to, such as, wherein, etc., or even dropped in some cases. Therefore, we begin with whenever Toyu comes, you start translating it as called, and that it can be further fine-tuned contextually. There are there was another unit which we found in the, or actually expression, which we thought that can be treated as a unit, sono saini, because saini refers to a particular action or sequence of events or happening or festival. So when it is translated, you will have to pick up the exact word from the context. In the previous module, it was the process. And the last, when subject understanding becomes prerequisite and you need to spend a lot of time in understanding that subject, it may not be economically viable, and sometimes it becomes tiring to understand a subject which you are not very keen to learn, or which is very far from your usual subjects or usual areas of interest. Therefore, unit is one solution, or unit is one way to make that job simpler. If you have units available for that particular subject, or the expressions or the phrases used in that particular subject, it will make the job much simpler. Let's see some examples of the legal sentence. And disclaimer, please remember that the translation which is given for the examples given in this particular module and even in the previous one also are actually second or the revised translation only, and they are not the ultimate or the perfect translations. Let's see the example 1. For the sake of saving on the time and giving explanation on the important elements, let's skip reading the example. Let's start straight away with the 5W1H, the question and answer. So Anu, can you read both question and answer?
First question is Nani ni taishite, answer would be Tao no Teiyaku koku no iju shamu shi haragareru rishi ni taishite wa.
Wait, in fact this is the subject about or topic about which it's going to be talked about, because taishite is actually making this preceding clause topic. Therefore it looks quite complicated, but don't get bogged down by the content. Just remember nitaishteva. So rishi nitaishteva is enough, and rest of the portion can be translated later on. We have done the translation here. of this part only.
Next question is, Soshite, answer is, Ippo no teiyaku kokunai ni oite shoji, and
Rishi ni taishite wa. See, ippo no teiyaku kokunai ni oite. See, teiyaku kokuyu is because you don't hear these words every day. Teiyaku is basically contract, and koku is contracting country, and it's normally called contracting state instead. So as a commoner, you will find it difficult to even absorb the difference between the nation and the state, particularly in the case of India, because state means something else, and so state means prefecture in the case of India. So this is technical term, so it can be left out. So within something nioite shoji, so it generates, and then rishini taishite wa.
Next question is, nani ga dekiru? Answer would be sozei o kasuru koto ga dekiru.
Sozei o kasuru koto ga dekiru. So there are quite interesting things coming here. So let's do these things step by step. I would request all of you to focus on small pieces, and as this is an online module, so you can see it repeatedly, you can stop it and see it again. I would request you all not to stop in between, see the module once in continuity, then come back and see it again. You'll have a better clarity.
Next question is, doko de? Answer would be togai tao no teiyaku koku ni oite.
This was simple, okay. See, 5W1H is working wonderfully here. Okay, this is the combination of what all answers were there. This is the published translation which was available. So now let's compare the two. Okay, let's see the comments also. See, not much difference in both the translation here. Interesting. 5W1H has helped us reach a level where you find that the translation, the published translation, is also coming quite close to the published translation. So it's too early to make this comment, and though it's not mentioned in this module also, you can probably think that a 5W1H rendered translation, which we talked about in the recapitulation also, will be a mechanical output. Do you understand what I mean to say? The published translation in the case of legal, in the case of taxation, is also a mechanically written document. Therefore, it is difficult because it's mechanically written long document. It's not one paragraph. One page will have probably 8 to 10 paragraphs, and then there will be 5 to 10 pages of contract. So you get tired when you're reading mechanical, and it makes the content difficult. And same is true about Japanese also, because in Japanese also the text is written in the same manner. And translation with 5W1H is explicit because it explains, because you're trying to find out what is happening, why it is happening, how it is happening. So when the answers come, it becomes explicit automatically. However, the published translation has readability as it maintains the target language style, because the writer has got experience in this particular domain. So let us use the published translation through the prism of CPCI now. Okay. These are the two translations, translation 1 and translation 2. That is, translation 2 is the published translation here, and we are picking up some examples or some components, Rishi ni taishite, and it's getting translated as for in the case of translation done mechanically, and in the published translation it's getting dropped, and therefore ni taishite becomes an expression. So can you read out the learning here?
Getting dropped in translation 2 as nani nani rishi gets connected to sozei o kazuru koto ga dekiru directly in English. Use of expression in the source text was a way to express explicitly.
Yeah. So in the source text, explicit expression was required. So ni taishite was used. It's easier to express what you want to say, but if you want to put it directly, you have to be an experienced person, and it has to be said. Probably it has to be checked again and again, and the category of CPCI in this particular case for this expression is actually dropped, and the category is implicit. Yes, read out the second component.
Second one is teiyaku kokunai ni oite shoji.
See, ni oite shoji, basically. So ni oite is in, and the expression is, we are just picking up the expression, Ni oite is connecting to shoji as in the and here in is the which is the closest equivalent, while the essence of oite is transferred contextually in the verb. There is a verbal essence in ni oite that is transferred contextually, and this is the equivalent used here is core. Depending on the context, ni taishteva can be dropped. We have seen this in the previous examples also. The object gets connected to the verb directly. This is the condition. Yes, read out please.
Next is Sozei o kasuru koto ga dekiru.
Text can be levied as the direct translation, but if you see all the examples or even if you read any such text, you will find maybe text. So it's Soze is text, o kasuru is apply or put ga dekiru. So apply text, and there is a verb available, maybe text. So it may be text gives the direct. So this may be treated as core equivalent at unit level. I've already explained this, so probably not required. We can go ahead. Let's see the example 2, and let's start with 5W1X straight.
Nanini taishite. Answer is ichi no rishi ni taishiteva.
Ichi no rishi ni taishiteva. In this case, ichi was available, so you can understand that ichi, one which is coming prior to this, sono rishi ni taishiteva. But if it is not there, then you have to probably translate it literally, and this is a literal translation coming here.
Nani ga dekiru. Answer is Togai rishi ga shojika teiyaku koku ni oite mo Togai teiyaku koku no furei ni shitagatte Sozei o kasuru koto ga dekiru.
Okay, so Sozei o kasuru koto ga dekiru is the literal answer for this particular Nani ga dekiru. We have just saved on number of questions. Otherwise, there could have been question at ni oite mo, so a question could have been there. Then shitagatte is coming, so nani ni shitagatte could have been another question. And next is sorede dosuru.
Sono sozei no gaku wa togai rishi no jutosha ga togai rishi no jueki sha de aru bai wa tsugi no gaku o koenai mono to suru.
Okay, tsugi no gaku o koenai mono to suru, and rest is explanation. So it's a smaller sentence within the sentence, could have been handled if it is difficult, so it can be handled separately. But the important part here is tsugi no gaku o koenai mono to suru. Okay. See, it's too small for me. Can you read out?
First comment is number of questions depends on the degree of familiarity. Lesser the familiarity, simpler and more.
Yeah, this can be treated as a principle that if you put more number of questions, it becomes more clear. But then the job of putting questions and arranging the answers, it itself becomes a job. So you may probably lose interest in doing the translation if you try to apply this technique for each and every paragraph. So lesser the number of questions, it will be more comfortable for you to handle it. But then you should have more familiarity to have less number of questions. And for example, in this case, more questions such as dokode and donabai could have been added or could have been put for answer 2 and 3. This is the translation coming out from the combination of what answers we received in the previous slide. And this is the published translation again available. If you see carefully, published translation is smaller here. This means the same content has been brought together, and let's see the difference now. Yeah, just read out the comments.
Translation done by using 5W1H technique results in direct translation. It means accurate but slightly blunt.
We are writing again and again in almost all modules these comments, because you must be clear that what you are using is not that you should use it per se. You should use it only if it is useful for you.
Next is appropriate writing style of target language in published translation leads to better readability without compromising accuracy.
This is translation 1 and translation 2 is the published translation, and we are picking up few components, and in this case also ichi no rishi ni taishite wa translated as for in the case of translation 1. It is getting dropped in the case of translation 2. Explanation, can you read out?
Similar to example 1, it is getting dropped in translation 2 as Rishi directly connects to Sozei o Kazuru koto ga dekiru. In Japanese, it is explicit way of writing, and wa makes it topic which gets connected to verb directly in English.
Okay, so the important thing here which one should remember is that as far is getting dropped, or Nita Ishteva is getting dropped in the published translation. So published translation means because it is rewritten, the person who is writing, he will write in his own style. So Nita Ishteva being a Japanese expression, it's getting dropped, and this essence for which Nita Ishteva was used is brought very naturally in the rewritten text. Yes, please read.
Next expression is ni oitemo. In translation 1, it is even in, and in translation 2, it is also something in.
So not much different, but just read the expression, the learning.
Similar to example 1, nani nani ni oite connects to teiyaku koku and therefore translated as in. Also, A plus ni oite can be taken as quasi-universal unit where A represents a place, and here mo shows emphasis. In the beginning, such interest refers to ichi no rishi.
Okay. One more, that is koenai monotosuru is I think very important. Shall not exceed. So suppose I say ju o koenai monotosuru, so shall not exceed 10. Ika o koenai monotosuru, so it shall not exceed what is given below. So it's very good unit, which can universal unit that can be used for wherever you require in almost all the subjects. Just read the learning.
Nani nani koinai monoto suru. Here, koinai monoto suru will have a fixed equivalent, that is, shall not exceed.
Okay. Yeah, you can read out this also.
First comment is expression nani nani koinai monoto suru will always behave in same manner in any domain. Therefore, universal unit and the equivalent used here is of core category under CPCI. Next is Juekisha is equals to beneficiary, which is core, and beneficial honor will be contextual.
Yeah, this is interesting. See, koenai monotosuru at this unit level is core. The equivalent used is core. And Juekisha, beneficiary is the core, but when you go for beneficial owner, although this owner is probably coming from sha, and beneficial probably is an adjectival form coming from jueki, but this is contextual because it is changing, and because there must be some owner or some ownership must have been required in the context. Otherwise, sha does not mean owner. One more example. Let's go further. This is a little bit bigger example, so I would request all of you to jot down this example, divide it into pieces and try yourself, and then look here and you'll find it interesting in various ways. Yes, let's start from WH, 5W1H.
First question is nani ni taishite. Answer is ippo no teiyaku koku no kigyo no rishi ni taishite.
Okay.
Next is donna bai. Answer is sono kigyo ga tao no teiyaku koku nai ni aru tokyo teki shisetsu o tsujite Togai tao no teiyaku koku ni oite jigyo o okonawanai kagiri. Next question is nani ga dekiru. Answer would be Togai ippo no teiyaku koku ni oite nomi sozei o kasuru koto ga dekiru.
See, again, sozei o kasuru koto ga dekiru is coming, so this is used here. So this means its frequencies is higher. In the second sentence, there was something called kagiru. What was that? Okonawanai kagiri. So jigyo okonawanai kagiri. Okonawanai kagiri, again we'll study it further, but is a unit which needs to be remembered.
Next question is soshite sojanai bai wa. Answer is ippo no teiyaku koku no.
I think let's read the last part of this. That is the last line. That is
Togai tao no teiyaku koku ni oite sozei o kasuru koto ga dekiru.
okay. So in what case or sojanai bai wa, what do you do in when it is not so? So something ni oite sozeo kasuru koto ga dekiru. And similarly, the translation would be when it is not like this, at the end it will be can be text. Yes, even a long answer can be picked up from one question once the degree of familiarity improves. So you can, if you find it difficult, you can translate it separately or maybe break it down into smaller sentences, macroframe, microframe, etc. However, there are too many issues in this translation. Although it has been translated in one go, but there are issues. Let's see those issues. Let's see the comparable example. This is the this is the revised translation, and I think we have now. If we okay, look at through the 5W1H once again. Yes, just put the question and see. Let's compare the translation 1 and translation 2. Okay, Donna Bai. It's at the end it says Jigyo Oko now Bai Nivam, and this is the detail. Now, if you see carefully, the first translation is the literal translation, word by word translation. It covers almost everything. Translation 2 says in too small print. Can you read it, Anu, for me?
Translation 2 is when the enterprise conducts business as aforesaid.
Okay, when the enterprise conducts the business as aforesaid, because in the previous para or in the previous context, or maybe in the same paragraph, the previous sentence has explained all the elements, and these elements are occurring in the same order with the same relationship in this sentence. Therefore, it can be called as aforesaid. This covers everything, and there are some more comparisons. Just please read out that comments. Tier 1.
Tier 1 is direct and literal translation. Tier 2 implicit.
Okay.
Implicit means stated above and thus repetition avoided. Same content has come in the previous sentence.
Okay.
Next
Yeah, once again.
Nani Vaishte.
Yeah, please do the same thing.
Translation 1 is regarding the part of company's profits only that has to be returned either directly or indirectly for the permanent establishment. A correction is profits of that enterprise can be taxed in that country to the extent directly or indirectly attributable to that permanent establishment.
So size wise not so different, but the quality wise the second translation is certainly better. So let's see the comments.
Comment is nani nani khaiserareru bobun.
This was probably not translated correctly in the translation 1. Okay.
Part attributable with money to the extent attributable. Object and verb are linked directly, therefore nitaishte is dropped. So
in two components, nitaishte is dropped here, that is one part, and the second is that because it is to the extent attributable is very important here. So kaiserareru bobun, if you say the part that can be put on, obviously means to the extent it can be attributed. What would be the category of this? We have not written here this. If we treat ni kaiserareru bobun, actually ni kaiseraru alone is enough, and the equivalent would be attributable for this part. Attributable to. Now this is translation with 5W1H and the revised translation given here, and just read out the comments.
First comment is, in summary, translation through 5W1H seems to be blunt, as the equivalence as well as the style do not render desired quality. Next is, in the revised translation, equivalence and style have been selected to suit the flow. Also, equivalent selection for Jigyo Okonawa Nai Kagiri, Sozei Okazuru Kotoga Dekiru, etc. will be explained through CPCI in the next slides.
Okay. Yeah. This is the published translation, okay. Just read out the comments.
There is not much difference between the revised translation and the published translation. So let us see the revised translation through the prism of CPCI now.
Okay, the first sentence component is Kiyo no, what's written there? Kiyo no ritoku ni taishite and as for something, for the ni taishite, and it's an expression similar to example 1 and 2. Here also ritoku directly connects to soze o kasuru, koto ga dekiru. So in Japanese it is explicit, in the case of English it is directly connected, and the equivalent in this particular case will be, because it's in English it's actually implicit, but for explicit and implicit we are using only one category, so it's implicit category, expression is dropped. Okay, kigyo, kigyo can be company and enterprise both, but suppose I say I am in the company of a very good friend, that's not enterprise. You can say it has got some link, you are in the company of say some good person, or maybe a good friend, or maybe a good teacher, and it can lead to something which is enterprising. Yes, possible, but directly it is slightly different. So enterprise is the better equivalent for the kigyo, and it can probably be called core equivalent for the kigyo. So ni taishite, it's quite interesting to note here that it's getting dropped very often. This means of course the condition remains if it gets connected directly to the main verb. Yeah, please read out. Yeah, I thought we will take up this oko nawa nai kagiri as expression.
Translation 1 is unless conduct operations, and translation 2 is so long as something does not conduct operations.
Okay, so long as is better expression, fine.
Comment is both equivalents can be used, but it begins with something like so long as.
Okay, and the CPCI equivalent is core in this case at expression level. Yeah, please read out.
Next is Teyaku koku nai ni aru kokyu teki shifutsu. Translation 1 is permanent establishment of that contracting state, and then translation 2 is permanent establishment situated there.
Situated therein means situated in that particular country or that particular entity, within that particular entity, and this will be treated as what is the unit you are picking up here? A ni aru B. Okay. So and explanation is
here Teyaku koku nai ni aru kokyu teki shifutsu equals to A ni aru B. In translation 2, something ni aru equals to situated therein, and next could be kokyu teki shifutsu, that is P, permanent establishment.
There are two components. One is ni aru is getting translation situated therein, and the P is again a permanent entity, is again a permanent establishment, again is a concept, slightly it's a type of company, or it's a category of company, you can say. So it's a unit again. Only representative examples are shown here, so all components can be explained through this method, because we have picked up few only because the time allotted for the module is limited. Yeah, this is the learning from the module, and the first learning is that regardless of the domain, 5W1H technique helps in translation, though it is mechanical. Longer answer per question is possible, but only after you are familiarized, after you have familiarized with the whole technique. Higher the degree of familiarity, lower the questions, and it would mean that you have in-depth knowledge of the source language as well as target language, then only you should attempt it. At least one standard translation can be obtained through application of technique. Not at least one, at least near standard translation can be obtained. It is the fine tuning that makes the difference. The standard translation, I should say, the first translation is a mechanical translation. Second translation, where you have done some fine tuning, is standard translation, and after that it will depend on the person who wants to, who is giving the individual touch. Depending on that, the finishing touch will come. Ni taishteva acts very often as a object, as a topic, and may be dropped during transpositioning if it connects directly to the relevant verb. Longer phrases can be considered as units, particularly if the representation is core. For example, sozeo kasaru koto wa dekiru, sozeo kasaru, both can be taken up separate units. Then koenai mono to suru, to text. Okay, can you read the next contextual?
Core and or contextual. Jueki sha equals to beneficiary core and beneficial owner contextual. Next is CPCI advantage. Appropriate equivalent leads to improvement in quality, which leads to free translation. CPCI parameters can be used to evaluate quality in terms of accuracy, readability, and style.
That's all in this module. These are the references, and thank you very much for being with me. Arigatou gozaimasu. See you again with few more examples in module 30.